Hi, everybody, and welcome to TNM Coaching Unplugged and Zoran Todorovic Interconnected podcast. So happy to be with you in the new year. And this is going to be one of the first podcasts we're publishing in the new year in 2023. We're so grateful and happy that you keep on coming week after week in this space when you are elevating your mind, elevating your heart, elevating your soul to the next level and beyond. The space when you're inspiring yourself to reclaim your true authentic self, to become more free, to become more resilient, transformational, evolutionary, and to truly transform your life. So thank you so much for joining in. As always, we have wonderful people joining us in this podcast. There's such a creative geniuses all around the world with different skills and disciplines and modalities. And today we have a beautiful friend and collaborator, Nina Bubamara. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her. She is a creative director. She's also a self-inquiry coach. And ever since she was a little girl, she was connected. She was one of these star seeds, as I call them, who never lost the connection to themselves, to the divine, to multidimensional nature of the life. And that also opened a deeper curiosity. What makes us unique as human beings? What is our essence? How do we show up in our essence? What do we need to do to be truly human in the best version of ourselves? She has been delivering coaching and training and development and supporting other teachers in her life. She also created a circle called I Am Circle, which is the space of like-minded, heart-led soul seekers to unite in the self-inquiry and self-leadership. And I love this self-leadership element because I believe, as you know, that self-leadership is absolutely necessary nowadays for all of us to activate. And she's also enjoying dance and ecstatic dance, and she's using the movement to access the portal of creation and connection to their inner child and to awaken her spirit. And I met with her at the festival, and we had a lot of connection, and our free spirits connected. And I was saying, Nina, let's record this podcast. You're such an important speaker and voice nowadays. So I invited her to be my guest. So Nina, welcome. I'm so glad and happy to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really beautiful to be here and to speak. And yeah, it feels like a transformational time for me too. So when you speak into things that have been alive in me, things are so evolving with these times. And we're going to speak into that a little bit, what that means to me.
Exactly. So, and this is the topic of our conversation. You were talking to me the other day and you said that what is relevant and current to you right now is this exploration, the inquiry. What does it truly mean to walk back home for you, to you? And we also recorded a little bit of live around it on Instagram, and we kind of shared a little bit, but I would love to go a little bit back into that and just share where you are in relationship to that walking back home. And then we can explore further with our audience.
Sure. So in these really ever-changing, transforming times, we've been through huge shifts on Earth, and we are awakening more and more to where sort of the systems and structures that we've been living by, society's narratives, that they aren't serving our human spirit, they aren't serving our human being. And a lot of people are coming into these realizations in different ways. And personally, I would say the journey of walking home began for me a decade ago. And I feel as if I'm entering into a new chapter, a new decade, where the resources and the way in which navigating that time and pouring it back into my service, into my work. And the way that I see it for me personally, walking back home is to come into self, where you feel so deeply connected to who you are, your essence, and we'll talk about that again. And you understand what it feels like to lead with the heart. So coming home into the heart, so we're not being head-led or pain-led. So we are working through the layers of our experiences, of our trauma, of our pain points, of the stories that we've held on to, the beliefs And this is, again, the dismantling of these structures and systems occurring from the inside out. And so walking home has been that process of dismantling and unlearning, and it's a continued journey. So there is no destination home. I also believe that walking home requires us to face off with the identity and the attachment to our identity and the concept of death, that death is in fact truth, and building a relationship to death is building our relationship to life. And I feel like there's this threshold that we must cross where we have to face off with the fear of the unknown, the fear of death. And that's part of the path walking home. And also returning to principles that connect us to life. So returning to ancient principles, rituals, ceremony, nature being, the living, breathing, or for me personally, it's this living, breathing organism that we are it. And so me walking home wasn't just me thinking, oh, well, I am nature, but it was actually feeling it, like really feeling at one with nature, as nature. And when I was a child, that's the essence that I can relate to, this awe and wonder and beauty at nature. And then, of course, we get lost in our journeys of life, and we follow these paths, maybe, our education system that follows into career ladders, that we follow in the paths of our friendship circles and our family dynamics. And we end up getting removed from our deepest sense of self, and we disconnect from this attunement to our essence. And then it takes something to kind of break that, to inquire and go into self-inquiry. And I believe the self-inquiry becomes the self-leadership. It kind of naturally, once you lean in and you begin that journey with self, it becomes self-leadership. And self-leadership to me is also now sacred sovereignty. And that for me is kind of the journey of walking home. And it's a long haul game.
Yeah, I love that. It's a long haul game. It's not like you reach the destination, you keep on walking and walking. So let's kind of go layer by layer and see where we are. So you mentioned coming back home, it's reconnecting to your essence, it's reconnecting to your heart. It's really understanding your identity and letting go of your identity, creating relationship with that which is the truth of our life, making sure that we have a deeper, more profound relationship with nature, and deepening that relationship of sense of self, and then eventually that leads us to self-inquiry, which is self-leadership. And I love this sacred sovereignty. We need to explore that. I love the sacred sovereignty. This is the new term that you came up with, but it's a really beautiful one. So out of these things, which one do you think is the most essential? Is it connecting to your essence, the first step to it? Is it heart? Is it death? Or it's all equally important? But how would you walk that path if you were to be a listener?
For me, the most important thing is the person's relationship to it. As in, we have to strip everything away. All we have is ourselves. We heal us. We lead us. Our life is our medicine. What sparks us up, what lights our soul, what connects, what resonates. And there's so much noise out there these days. And so we really have to learn this discernment of, this is resonating with me. It's like, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. When you're listening to this podcast, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And don't try and judge and label what doesn't, because that's the ego. That's the ego mind wanting to, protect, think we know. But it's this deeper resonance and following in that path. That's our own self-led path where we tune into what is resonating for us. And those dots connect, those dots begin to connect. And that's something that I've sort of said in my work, is like, I do have a gift when I work with people for dot connecting, as in seeing the threads that link everything together, connecting the dots and finding those roots, tending to the roots. Where do we need to lean in? How are we going to connect those dots and unlock and unblock and unleash? Because that's really what we're kind of sitting with when we're sitting in struggle or we're sitting in challenge or discomfort. That's where we need to lean into. And it's these skills that we haven't necessarily developed early on in our lives. I believe that the new generation of babes that are being born are going to be like next level with their resources on how to understand their sense of self and how to discern and how to express their needs, because we have more and more and more adults learning about these things. And understanding how it all worked, how the timeline has worked. We have to kind of understand. So the most important thing is to actually listen and learn your way, your unique way, and what is resonant for you, and following that, because that is where the wisdom comes from. Is by leaning into life. And actually letting the experiences hit us, and then it's how we show up for ourselves. It's how we gather the wisdom. It's how we alchemize our own pain. And we can be supported in that journey, absolutely. But again, recognizing resonance.
So that resonance and leaning into our life and understanding yourself on a deeper level is the first step, or one of the most important, things to do to understand ourselves on the level of the essence of who we are. Would you say to people who are listening and hearing you, but asking questions, for example, okay, I get it, I know what I need to do, but how do I do this? Would you say to the how?
So yeah, I did not have the vocabulary or the language or the awareness or the wisdom a decade ago. And therefore, the biggest step, the best step to take is to ask for guidance, and to take it's courage. It really is courage. It's courage to listen to that scary voice that's calling for something. And equally, if I was to look back and communicate with those versions of myself that were, genuinely deeply suffering with overwhelming thoughts, anxiety, depressive sort of tendencies that weren't making sense to me, if I was to communicate back with these parts of Nina, I would say that these are expressions of, they're like symptoms that are expressing and moving through you that are not forever. They are absolutely not forever. They have beautiful wisdom in it for you if we can just lean into them and let them teach us, rather than labeling that we so do in our society as well. Is label good or bad, or give things diagnosis and give things all this energy behind it, and then we identify with it. And ultimately, I had this sense that there was something more to it, and that I just had to keep trusting. And so I walked those, and I remember those initial steps, and continue to be in different ways, because we're always having to lean in with courage with certain things as we're expanding our capacity and making more heart-led decisions. But in those times where it was those first initial steps, on a deep, deep level, that there is something in your life that is calling for you to take a leap on, or that is calling for you to pour some energy into, that you can't continue to numb or escape, or the voice is getting louder, or that decision, or that it becomes unbearable. And it's so clear when somebody, when someone identifies it, and it's just the courage to listen to that inner voice, and not the mind trying to put it into boxes and make it all make sense, or the fear. And it's really establishing the relationship with fear ultimately.
So listening to that inner voice is very important. And I love that you're sharing that. And let's kind of hop into that relationship with fear. So from your life experience and from your, challenges and how did you move through your life? What was your relationship to fear, and what is your relationship to fear right now? And ultimately, where do we need to be as humanity within our relationship with fear?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's fascinating really when you get into the energetics of fear, because it feels so real, and yet it is so not, but it feels so real. And so I believe that the gateway to working with fear, the thought-based fears, so if we strip back and write down what all of our fears are,
Mm-hmm.
and then we get into the energetics of what happens in our body around that fear. Of course, some fear is healthy, so we can't try and eliminate fear, but it's really developing a relationship to what our unique fears are,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to zoom out and going like, where did this fear stem from?
Mm-hmm.
Where did I learn this fear? What is this fear trying to keep me safe from? What are the risks if I face this fear? Am I risking who I think I am?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, at the root of a lot of fear is, fear of being seen and expressing ourselves, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown, fear of rejection. And of course, when you get into the energetics of our human biology, and you enter into the field of why fear of rejection exists in our tribes, where if we were rejected by our tribes, we would die. So fear of in terms of the dynamic of being in society and fitting in and belonging. It's like we're always navigating belonging from the moment that we're born. We're navigating belonging with our family. We're navigating belonging. And so fear of being rejected, fear of being ostracized, abandoned. These are all really potent things to kind of look at. What experiences have you had that have activated these fears? And then we can start to peel them back. But one of the greatest fears, I believe, is fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately fear of death. And really, we have to understand if that feels relevant to us. And my relationship with death was presented to me many years ago when I faced off with the fear that I was going to get a brain tumor, actually. And
Right.
I recorded a podcast about it you can find it, it's Deep and Meaningful's podcast. But really, it was kind of catastrophizing thoughts, manifesting from an anxious energy. And I suddenly was faced off with this narrative and this story. But it actually did manifest itself in tumor, in an actual tumor in my brain that is benign. And I faced off with the reckoning with death. So I did a lot of studying around death. I explored death, and I really landed inside my body of this kind of acceptance and peace. And as that transpired over a period of time, the thoughts, I faced off with the thoughts that were manifesting around that. They were like intrusive thoughts. They disappeared. And I remember I had different tools and techniques to help these fears that were arising. And one of them was to go and look up at the sky. Anytime that these fears would arise, I would go and look up at the sky, and it would just bring me back into my body. And of course, it is a relationship with these fears is about coming back into the body, nervous system work. And so I managed to reprogram these thoughts by coming back to the passing, the passing of the sky, the passing of the weather, and that everything is impermanent. And it's these little messages that we know. It's like, yeah, everything's impermanent. But then when it really lands for you and you're like, oh yeah, it's so impermanent, so this is going to pass, right? Okay, it's passing. And then it would pass and the time would become less and less when these thoughts would arise. And then a few years later, I actually went to get a scan on the actual lump that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember walking into the hospital and I didn't feel any fear. I wasn't catastrophizing about what might happen. I did not feel any fear. I was just so surrendered. And I remember lying down to have the scan and I looked up and the ceiling was the sky. The ceiling was kind of, fake tiles of the sky. And I just had this beautiful, like, laughter moment, like this joyful moment of just everything's absolutely fine. And that's just so beautiful because it was kind of like, it's where you arrive at on the journey and you just have these little pockets of moments where it's just like, time and the process is unfolding, and you had the courage to lean in, and you had the resilience to keep moving, and you faced off with this fear, and it doesn't exist anymore. And I believe that actually is what it is about. And so it supported me in facing off with other things. And that's another piece around the sacred sovereignty, actually.
So let's dive into the sacred sovereignty. I love that term. What is that for you, and how can we achieve that sacred sovereignty ourselves?
Well, of course, when we're talking about walking home, coming back into home with our bodies. Our bodies are our home. They are these sacred vessels that house us. They house our spirit. They house our soul. And so journeying with health has been huge for me over the years, and more natural living, prioritizing health, and really kind of reclaiming and empowering ourselves with our health, because our systems, they do disempower our health. We have a symptom show up, we go to a doctor and they tell us what it might be, and we have no connection. We generally don't have a connection to what it could be. And we've learned to kind of disassociate and put the power in other people's hands. And when we start to lean in and to start listening to the body and to see different symptoms showing up as little signals and signs, and recognizing, that we are sovereign in our bodies, like we have agency over our bodies, and we have to reclaim that, and that we can decide, we can discern, and we have to recognize that there are amazing skilled experts out there that can support us in that, but no one should ever really be telling us, what's going on with us and our bodies, because often it's not a textbook black and white approach. It's a cluster of symptoms often that have got something attached to it, and that ultimately, well, I believe that there is just so much more going on behind our health. And I think claiming that sacred sovereignty is building a relationship to our body as a ecosystem that's communicating with all parts of us on all levels, all different bodies, the physical body, the energetic body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body. And so sacred sovereignty is to coming into claim and to own all of those bodies, and to kind of really, really recognize that we are sovereign, but we must actually behave like we're sovereign.
And
so
claim it. It's exactly as you said, claim the sovereignty. So how would you claim it? Would you say loudly to yourself, I claim sovereignty and over my body? What would be the process for people to do that? Because I'm a huge believer in that. I think that claiming that sovereignty is so important, because it's a source of empowerment, because we literally empowering ourselves, as you said, with our health and well-being. And we are in relationship to this beautiful ecosystem of our body. We know exactly why things are happening, and we're able to be in stillness and silence to listen to our body, to understand how is body communicating. And I love what you're saying, that we're all intertwined with the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual body. So it doesn't even if there is a symptom in physical body, it might come from your emotions, it might come from your overpowering thoughts, it might be something spiritual that is happening that you're not really looking into or addressing. You know, it's complex in a way. So claiming that, it's so beautiful. And how do we do it? Do I stand in front of the mirror and say, Zoran, you have complete and total sovereignty over your body, and you have sacred sovereignty over yourself? Would you do it like that?
I guess that is one way to approach it, but I will tell you the harder way.
I love harder way.
And the harder way
wants to be challenged.
the harder way is when the symptoms arise. How do you be when the symptoms arise? So when the symptom, the irritation, the uncomfortable, and you just want to take that quick fix solution that we've learned how to do, or you want to listen to somebody else's opinion or advice over and above your own, and you in those moments you come in and you ask and you lean in and you explore and you research and you take what resonates and you leave what doesn't, because it's that resonance within. You know your emotional body, you know your stress body, you know your level, you know, in life where you've been triggered by something and it's activating you, but it's actually showing up in your gut. You know, if you've had a strenuous maybe a conflict or something and it manifests somewhere. You know, for me it is my head. So it was interesting to me and the unfoldings of weaving together the dots connected in my life, how it all connects, because I get a lot whenever I have some form of tension or headiness, it manifests in my head, and it literally, it kind of either I get a headache or a head cold. But it's super interesting. So for some people it's in their gut, for some people it's in their you know, in their bodies, chronic back pain, chronic pain, all of these fascinating things to kind of to look in and listen to. But the point where we claim our sacred sovereignty is when those things are arising, and instead of reaching out, we reclaim and we actually sit in it, and we're like, this symptom that I feel is uncomfortable, that I want to label as bad, that I want to push away, how is this healing me? How is this showing me the direction that I need to move to walk home? How is this actually not a bad thing at all, even if every single part of us thinks that it is?
Yeah. How beautiful and empowering that is. And that question, how is that healing me? This discomfort that I'm feeling right now, how is this supporting me? Instead of going into the labeling and, you know, sense making and trying to fix it, you know. And this is what you truly mean by leaning in. It's leaning in, as I understand right now, it's being able to lean into that self-inquiry, to stay with it and to really figure it out yourself. Because once when you do, then you can truly transform. Otherwise, it will repeat itself, or it will keep on growing as some kind of discomfort or pattern.
Dis-ease. Yeah.
There's a lot of that in this is. And I would love to end with something that is important to me, just to kind of complete this podcast with you, this heart-based living. I feel that right now we are at the moment of human evolution when it's more important than ever to be interconnected with our heart. And it's more important than ever to allow yourself to experience the deeper relationship with your heart, and to allow your heart to be the voice and to tell you, move here, do this, let go of that, you know, stay here. So in your own life journey, what empowered you to make that choice or that transition into following your mind to the level of really trusting your heart and allowing your heart to lead the way? That's the first question. The second one is, what do you feel we should all do to be able to do that?
I've spent the beginning of this year really intentionally actually building deeper relationship to my heart space. And I've been not just seeing it as my heart, but seeing it as my inner child's heart also. And reclaiming all of the ways where we have sort of disconnected, abandoned, or not held our hearts as sacred.
Mm.
And I said sacred sovereignty, and I'm going to say, sacred relating to the heart, and really recognizing, like, and asking the heart questions like, are you open to love? Are you hardened by something that has happened to you? Do you feel expansive in love, or like you are yearning for it from pain? Are you, and asking the heart to lead with decisions. So when we are faced with these things that we need to take courage on, and courage, the word courage means heart. Core is heart. The root of the word courage is heart. And so we just we just have to look at these beautiful hidden messages and meanings in words. The heart really, we have been so conditioned into head-led living. And it's just to recognize that we have been so conditioned, and our sort of the ways that we've been conditioned to live is just head-led. And so reestablishing a relationship with the heart is reestablishing a relationship to coming back into union with ourselves. And the heart, it doesn't lead with known things. It doesn't lead with familiar things. It leads with expansive into love, and into a direction where we have to establish trust and self-trust. Because you can't lead with heart until you trust that you can walk in the direction of heart. And that is why I can clearly see this journey of a decade coming into closing for my personal life, is that and in my journey is this sacred sovereignty with self-trust, and absolutely surrendering into the unknown right now in my path, like really feeling like, okay, I am just listening and leading with my heart to the absolutely unimaginable possibilities, because we really want to see a new world emerging. So it's not, no one knows, it's not figured out. There have been people, mystics and sages, and talking about the new era and the new earth, but we are not going to create it from the head. And it is not known. We have to absolutely trust in something bigger. And so I'm at a point where it's like, hey, heart, I'm gonna reclaim, I'm gonna return to my childlike essence, because you are tapped into source, and your pure expression is so tapped into source, way more than Nina, with all the experiences Nina has had in her life. And I just need to open, and I just need to listen, and I just need to lead into that unknown and be like, who wants to come with me? Because we know that these systems and structures need to dismantle, and our mind's not gonna know. And it wants to try, and it wants to keep us safe, and it wants to build things from the familiar ways of doing things. But leading into this new, it's like, okay, we've got to listen to the heart, and keep kind of clearing it from just keep clearing it and trusting in it. And when I was talking earlier about health and the journey of health and sacred sovereignty, I mean that in the most important senses of the word, for that self-trust. Because you cannot have self-trust if you also do not trust in your body. You can't have self-trust if you do not trust that your health is in your hands, that you are empowered to take on this life and into the unknown. You can't do it if you do not have trust in your sacred sovereignty, in your health. And if you haven't reclaimed that, if you haven't, then that is a brilliant place to start. Also, that is what, you know, walking home also means to me. And it is really that, you know, we walking and leading with the heart, and just letting it guide.
We are going to reference all your social medias and websites in the description of the podcast below for the people who feel inspired and drawn to your wonderful energy to walk back home alongside with you, you know, to be accompanied by your wonderful wisdom. Thank you so much, Nina, for coming to this podcast. I've learned so much. I mean, what I love about you is that the information that you're bringing is it's beautifully expressed, it's easy to understand, and it's fantastically easy to apply. And I thank you for that on behalf of our audience. Thank you so much for being our guest today. Thank you so much for coming to TNM Coaching Unplugged and Zoran Todorovic Interconnected. And to all of you who are listening, wow, isn't she wonderful? Keep listening to this podcast again and again and again. There's a wealth of information. Anything, Nina, that you would love to say just to leave our audience with the last piece of wisdom?
We are at this position in time, and all I can say is that beyond what you can imagine, you are held and you are safe, and you are guided by something that is unexplainable. And just to, you know, come join me in this unknown direction of I Am Circle will be evolving in this way, because it feels like it too has had to dismantle in order to lead into this new paradigm energy. And so come connect with me if this resonates, and just be like, I'm here to dive into the unknown and to open and expand my heart, and lead with courage, and you've got this.
We've got this. Thank you so much once again, Nina. Lots of love to everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Bye for now.